Hi, this is Erica McFarland, and I will be reading a story from More Short and Shivery Stories, retold by Robert San Souci. Croglin Grange in Cumberland, England, had been owned by a family named Fisher for over 100 years. But in the last century they moved out and rented the house to two brothers, Andrew and Gordon, and their sister Emma. The threesome settled in easily enough and soon made many friends in the neighborhood. One hot summer day, when the sultry air made any kind of work impossible, the three dined early. Afterward they sat on the veranda, savoring the cooling air and watching the full moon rise and bathe the lawn and gardens in silver light. At last they grew tired and went indoors to their separate rooms. Emma found that the night was still too warm for sleep. Leaving her shutters open and mounting the pillows behind her, she sat up in her bed, watching the moon through the ground floor windows. Gradually, she became aware of two tiny lights that flickered in and out of the rows of trees that separated the Grange's lawn from the village churchyard beyond. At first they seemed nothing more than fireflies to the young woman, but as she continued to stare at them, she saw them drawing nearer and nearer. To her surprise, they seemed to be embedded in a darker shadow, which had detached itself from the moon-cast shadows under the trees. Emma's hand went to her throat as she realized that something was approaching the house, and growing larger the nearer it came. From time to time the dark shape was swallowed up by the shadows of the trees on the lawn, but it always re-emerged larger than before, and coming closer and closer. Emma was filled with horror, and at first wanted to cry out, but her throat felt paralyzed. Then she dreaded making the least sound or movement, for fear that the thing outside the French doors would be drawn by it. She was sure that the pitiful barrier of glass panes and thin wooden sashes would not deter it for an instant. Suddenly, for no reason that the terrified woman could guess, the shape turned aside. She had the impression that it was going around the house instead of moving straight towards her. At the moment that the tall, dark figure was out of sight, Emma leapt from her bed and ran for the hall door. Just as her fingers circled the knob, however, she heard a blood-chilling scratch, scratch, scratch at the window. Turning, she saw the hideous brown face with flaming eyes glaring in at her. The thing rattled the French windows, which were securely locked on the inside. Emma was relieved to see that the flimsy-looking panels might keep it at bay. She tried to open the bedroom door to escape to the hall beyond, but the antique latch had jammed, trapping her in the room. The creature outside scratched again at the glass. Then it began to peck with its claws at the sash. Emma saw that it was scraping out the lead that held the window panes in place. Again she tried to scream, but only a soft moan escaped her lips. A single diamond-shaped pane fell inward and shattered on the floor. A long, bony finger snaked through and found the catch on the window. It flicked it open. Emma lurched toward the bed, hoping to reach the closet beyond, but the creature burst into the room, grabbing her hair with its long fingers and dragging her down so her head hung off the side of the bed. It leaned over and bit her on the throat. The sting released her voice, and she at last began to scream out loud. As she struggled to push the awful face away from her, she heard her brothers shouting and banging at the door. At this, the monster suddenly fled the room. When Andrew and Gordon found the door wouldn't budge, they slammed themselves against it, throwing it open by sheer force. Inside, they found their sister bleeding from a wound in the throat and unconscious. Past the open French windows, nothing moved in the moonlight on the lawn. Then Gordon cried out, "I see him!" And he pointed to a tall figure that fled from the shadows under the oak. Within it, without hesitation, he pursued it, but the monster moved twice as fast, with long, loping strides, and quickly leapt over the wall into the churchyard. By the time Gordon had reached the fieldstone wall, he could see nothing beyond the gravestones and vaults. His quarry had vanished. Frustrated and angry, he returned to his sister's room. There he found that Emma had regained consciousness, while Andrew dabbed at her wound with a damp towel. "Well, we shall keep watch the rest of the night," Andrew was saying. "In the morning we will take the train back to London." "Andrew, here's Gordon," the young woman said. "Did you find out who or what attacked me?" "No," her brother confessed. "It escaped into the churchyard." But whatever the devil it was, Andrew was right. We must leave here as quickly as possible. But Emma shook her head. "I will not let this experience drive us from our house, where we have been so happy." Though her brothers tried to persuade her to leave, Emma refused. You can read the rest of the story and more short and shivery tales by Robert San Souci.